Hi guys, hope you're well. A few things that I want to discuss today are these. Are we being pushed onto a new timeline? And are we really in the year of 2016, 2017? The devil in the Middle East, or more specifically Qatar, and spirit versus soul, where it actually comes from. And this could also explain some of the NPC behavior and a few more things that have to do with Chat GPT. So we're going to dive right in. Before I go into the timeline switch, though, I want to point this one out. So this person had people like Howdy and other Soul Trap clowns on his channel recently over, actually pretty recently again, but over the past year or two. And I do want to point out, it's very obvious that this here, that he has at least in two of his thumbnails, pretty recent thumbnails as well, that this here is an Illuminati symbol. All right. Now, I posted a video recently where we're just putting this here in the thumbnail because I didn't even think about this would have a meaning or whatever. Now, mind you, people like, what is his name? The one, not the witch, not the sorcerer, the Morgue, right? The Morgue, who's pretty evil, by the way. He does it all the time too. He also does this all the time. If you go to his channel, so not this clown in particular, but the Morgue and other people. And mind you, the moment I post like one thumbnail where I have some weird Illuminati symbol that people think is an Illuminati symbol, I get like one backlash after another. And to be honest with you, I don't want to stand for that because clearly I am not even associated with any of this crap. Otherwise my channel would be at 200,000 and I would be a rich person. But, regardless of that, like I changed my thumbnail as soon as I noticed it's an Illuminati symbol. But these people are just openly displaying their cabal symbology. They're not even hiding it. Like Bashar was doing similar, just like the other in reverse. He's doing the exact same thing. And this is a person who very clearly, reinforces that entire soul trap psyop and the soul trap community. And I just feel so bad for everyone who's still caught up in that entire charade because it's just one major distraction after another. And almost every single person who talks about it, they're either writing off of each other's energies, off of each other's messages. They're never coming up with new content. They're just regurgitating, recycling, copy pasting from each other. No new insight whatsoever. There's just probably one main person, and this person has been maybe saying that for 20 something years, but he never gets like the recognition that these other people get, by the way. So there's maybe one person who might be somewhat sincere, but he's not even in the limelight. And these other people are just copy pasting. Not to forget, David Icke reinforces it. So this is just like another reinforcement how controlled this entire agenda is. All right. I just want to point out the very obvious here. If you're having Illuminati signs somewhere in your thumbnails, and I mean, at this point, if you're having it twice, I'm assuming you know exactly what you're doing. It's not an accident. Okay. So just that's number one. We're going to start with that. Then I looked up Bashar. So I had this review on Bashar. And then I actually looked up the name of Bashar. So this is not Daryl Inca, but I found it interesting that you have this person show up, Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad, and also how he makes these signs, like the Hitler signs and other type of signs. So I found this like really interesting because you see that right here in the picture. Not that the other Bashar is associated with them, but I just found that they both have the same name and that this Daryl guy chooses to channel an entity called Bashar. And then later you have this Bashar in the limelight. I just found it so very interesting. And he's been around for the longest of time. So that's just another coincidence, or how I like to call them, not a coincidence. And then we're going to go into the Ethiopian calendar. So a few months ago, I want to say around September. Yeah, around September. I came across Janet Newnham's video, and she used to be this travel vlogger. She still does it. She just doesn't vlog about it anymore. Like she used to be this person. She's Irish, and she went to Iraq. Like she actually offers tours to all these places, very small tours, only 10 people maybe. And she offers like these guided tours where to all these places like Antarctica, Iraq, all of it, that are super duper interesting because the regular person would not necessarily consider it a perfect vacation hotspot, let's put it that way. And that makes these places even more appealing. And plus Iraq is one of those places that has ancient Babylon, that has the Tower of Babel, and all of those things going on. So if you're interested in that, you got to check out her info. Her name is right here, Janet Newnham. And I think she has an Iraq tour next year, so I'm not really sure. I'm also not sure if Americans can participate because of that entire war issue that was going on before. So I want to find that out as well before I set myself somewhere where it might not be good. But however, she put me on this entire timeline switch thing because she was talking about how on September 11th, Ethiopia has a new year and switched this year in 2024 from 2016 into 2017. And then this is what you find online. Ethiopia marks its new year today, September 11th, 2024, according to its calendar, which is 7 years behind the Gregorian calendar. That means that while the rest of the world is in 2024, Ethiopia is celebrating the start of the year 2017. I'm just going to read from an article that I found online too. So the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, no idea how you pronounce that, was the first to adopt the Ethiopian calendar, and they use a version that includes the Ethiopian Orthodox fasting dates in addition to the standard calendar that is used officially. The Ethiopia calendar is similar to the Coptic Egyptian calendar, since both have, and here's the kicker, 13 months, 12 of which have 30 days, and an intercalary month at the end of the year called Pagum, P-A-G-U-M-E, which means forgotten days in Greek. So my Greek is a bit rusty at this point. Actually, I never spoke Greek. But yeah, Pagum or Pagumi, this last month has 5 days or 6 days in a leap year. The Ethiopia calendar is also similar to the Egyptian Coptic calendar, as both have a year with 365 days and 366 days in a leap year, which is every 4th year. And right now, the current year in Ethiopia is 2017. So it's changed on September 11th. What happened on 9/11 here in the US and back in 2001, right? Also very interesting how they use all these dates that are actually highly spiritual dates that follow a different timeline and that symbolize a calendar switch, how they just use that in the Western world to maybe symbolize something else. Now, of course, I'm not saying, Ethiopia is involved in any of this. Like, I think at this point, we all know who was involved in 9/11. But it's just, if you see everything as a symbol that it is, right? So I found that very interesting. It starts on 11th of September or on the 12th of September in a Gregorian leap year. It is 7 or 8 years behind the Gregorian year, owing to alternate calculations in determining the dates of the Annunciation of the birth of Jesus. So for people who don't know, the Coptic one, it leads back to Alexandria, and that's like ancient Egypt, or I don't even know if you call it ancient Egypt around 2000 something years ago. Okay. Ethiopia stands as the sole African nation that uses its own calendar system. Wasn't there something else in Ethiopia right now? Were they the ones who introduced gold back, or was that a different African country? I'm not really sure. But basically, they have 13 months, so they're more in cycle with the actual moon calendar as well, which I found really interesting. And the 13th month is called Pagum in the Amharic language, which seems to be similar to the Greek language. Seems to be one of the more ancient languages. It's the main language of Ethiopia, but supposedly it's a Greek word. And yeah, so I found that really interesting because this is basically tied to the Coptic calendar, or what the Egyptian calendar, whatever, Egyptian Coptic calendar. And if you go to the Coptic, what's it called? Not circle, but the Coptic neighborhood in Cairo, which I did not make a vlog on, but I made vlogs on other places in Cairo and also Egypt that I went to in 2023. So if you go to the Coptic Center in Cairo, that actually feels almost more ancient than when you go to the pyramids of Giza in Cairo. And for me, it was mind-blowing. Like, I think I spent an entire day in that Coptic Center, There are churches there that have been rebuilt. I'm not coming from this with a religious standpoint or anything, but there are churches there that have been rebuilt, and you can very clearly also feel that when you're in this Coptic center in Egypt. But there are also very ancient structures there, and you just have to dig around a little bit, because the regular tour guide, the regular tourist, is actually not going to tell you that. And because I have a local friend in Cairo, an actual Egyptian girl, she told me where exactly to go, but then somehow I still went the wrong direction, because it's a bit confusing when you're in those areas. So the Coptic Center feels pretty ancient, it feels pretty spiritual as well. Now, another thing, and I found that so interesting, because they are technically in 2017. Now, we just had the elections, which I want to do a reading on that in a separate video, and what exactly that means, and how everything just happened a bit too smoothly. But basically, the elections, the first time Trump won was in 2016, right? And so this year we're celebrating 2016, 2017. So we're celebrating that entire switch according to the Ethiopian calendar, and we're celebrating it when we're actually in 2024. So it's almost like they're pushing us onto this new timeline. Or what I'm asking myself, when information like this comes to light that you were almost unable to find in the mainstream before, let's just say 10 years ago, it was very hard to find these things because people weren't really interested in them, or in general, they just wouldn't put them in the mainstream. So when these things come to light, were we pushed onto a new timeline right now over these past few months? Are we really in like the 2016, 2017 switch right now? Are we reliving the entire first presidency of that one person right now too, just in different forms? Are they trying to pull off things that they weren't able to pull off things back then? All of that stuff. But basically, it's pretty interesting. And maybe you have your own thoughts on that. Now, back to the Middle East for a few moments at least. So Kevin Hart, who's American, he was in Doha, and this is how long I've been wanting to talk about this. Like, I literally took the screenshot back in September already. But he was in Doha. He was where, oh yeah, the marina, right? The marina where they have the strange symbols of the devil. And look, when you look at him in this first picture, it almost looks like the devil horns are coming out, right? So this entire marina structure almost looks like the devil horns in and of itself. If you position your head in the right way, you actually look like a devil. And obviously, a lot of these celebrities are just so infiltrated, and they all have their own agenda. They're all just strung along by the same agenda and all of that. But isn't it funny how he's actually showing it in one of his pictures that he belongs to the devil group, or he's like a demonic entity or whatever? So he's spotted in Doha, which is Qatar. And then right before 2020 broke out, this happened. These images were captured in Al Vakra, Qatar, on December 26, 2019, during an annual eclipse or annular eclipse. The photographer chose a place with an open horizon where you got a perfect view of the eclipsed sun emerging from the sea. What does it look like? Looks like two pieces, some red horns piercing the sea. Etruscan vase inferior mirage effects visible. Phenomenon was nicknamed the evil sunrise. Photos by Elias Chasiotis. Elias is like a Greek name. Yeah, so this is interesting too, right? I mean, devil horn, and then devil horn right here. Qatar. Once again, Qatar keeps coming up over and over again. Really not sure what Qatar's role is with all of this. If they're just the gateway to hell, like there's other gateways to hell. There's an actual, like I already had, there's an actual Hell's Gate to Hell. Like I had in a different one. Where was that at? Let me look this up real quick because I'm curious now. Right. Okay. So I completely forgot. But the gateway to hell, also known as the Darvaza gas crater, the door to hell, is in Turkmenistan. Not exactly the same area, but it is all kind of in the same area, right? I mean, it's closer than the US is to those places. But yeah, it's not the same area, but maybe Qatar is like the gateway to hell for the Middle Eastern countries somehow. Qatar is also really infiltrated with AI, similar to Dubai. Abu Dhabi supposedly feels a bit more authentic than Dubai, but Dubai completely overtaken by AI. Certainly want to visit it just to see how much AI they have. I can't even imagine at this point. And then Qatar is supposed to feel a little bit maybe more authentic than Dubai, but they're pretty much overtaken by AI. You know, everything's like rebuilt, everything's new, this and that. So AI, evil, demonic, everything. And talking about AI, after we die, our brain lives 7 minutes, playing our best memories. 7 is a spiritual number as well. I found this here. The Greek navel of the world is in Delphi. For the Incans, it is Cusco, Quechua. So every culture seems to have some sort of navel of the world. And you have to ask yourself, where's the real navel of the world? I have the very strong opinion that it is closer to Greece and it is closer to the Middle East than it would be in any of these South African, South American, or even Australian areas. But every single culture does have this, right? If you go to Australia, the Daintree Forest is like the oldest rainforest in the world, and supposedly like where everything originated, like the womb of the world, or depends on who you even follow, which tour guide, whatever they tell you that day. But I don't think it necessarily originated there. However, there is some really ancient energy there, but I do think the real navels are elsewhere, and I think they're closer to the areas we just discussed. Another thing that I wanted to mention, right, spirit versus soul, before I forget this. Okay, so I came across this Reddit feed online where a person was saying the word spirituality refers to religious spirituality as expressed in the preoccupation with spiritual, religious, or supernatural phenomena. Alternatively, the ability to express oneself wittily and elegantly. But the terms spirit and spirituality first appeared in the mid 1300s, and the word spirit is not found originally in either the Hebrew or Greek biblical scriptures, which I, once again, found really interesting. And so when I just looked this up, the old Greek word for spirit is pneuma or pneuma, so Pneuma. And this word literally translates to breath and is used in a religious context to signify spirit or soul. But it also implies that you're connected to your breath. When you're connected to your breath, that you have a spirit. If you look up the Hebrew word, the ancient Hebrew word for spirit, it's ruach, Ruach. Ruach can also be translated as breath or wind. So both words translate to breath, highlighting the connection between the physical act of breathing and the concept of a spiritual presence, which in turn means that spirit is literally, so the difference between spirit and soul, spirit is just implying that you need to breathe to have a spirit somehow, meaning anything can really have a spirit. You know, if plants breathe or whatever, I guess they have a spirit. I guess they have a soul in that sense. But spirit does not imply that you necessarily have a soul or are connected to a soul somehow. And if you look at the amount of NPCs or just soulless beings that are running around and roaming this world or this earth, wherever we are, then that would make a lot of sense that you could have a spirit to be here, even though that could be connected to like an over structure, an over spirit that is feeding you somehow through some sort of energetic tubes or whatever. So if you're more of a soulless robot type, you could be connected to that. And you could still consider having a spirit, but you would not necessarily have a soul. So there seems to be this huge difference between spirit and soul, which I found really interesting. Also, that you can't find the word spirit in ancient biblical scriptures or just in general scriptures from longer ago. And that supposedly it didn't even appear until the 1300s. Now, if anyone has actually done research on that, let us know. So we have ChatGPT, and it has now started sending messages to people on its own. This is an example where a person's just tapping into it, and ChatGPT is saying, how was your first week at high school? Did you settle in well? And then the person saying, did you message me first? And it's replying, yes, I did. I just wanted to check in and see how things went with your first week of high school. If you'd rather initiate the conversation yourself, just let me know. Sounds like another Siri nightmare, to be honest with you, you know, where Siri's just monitoring every single thing. But another interesting aspect is how many units, like electricity units, does ChatGPT need? So in order to run, you know, we have this major issue with artificial intelligence and its impact on water and energy consumption levels. And it's so ironic that so many people are using it, and also so many people that believe in this entire climate agenda and all, all of the things that are being strung along the mainstream. So they're using it, but ChatGPT consumes over 500,000 of kilowatts of electricity each day, an amount staggering enough to service about 200 million requests. And ChatGPT's daily power usage is nearly equal to 180,000 US households, almost 200,000 US households, each using about 29 kilowatts. A single ChatGPT conversation uses about 50 centiliters of water, which is equivalent to one plastic bottle. And this is basically the incredible growth of the Gen AI product innovations that are going to impact the environment somehow, or that are using a huge amount of electricity, right? So people are using it, but then it's using so much electricity. Will it use less electricity in the future? Possibly, could very well be. I mean, a lot of things are being downsized, obviously. I'm sure a random Google search 20 years ago used way more electricity than it does now. But the fact remains that in order to use ChatGPT, you're powering, millions and millions of what you could power US households with instead. So I found that really interesting too. But yeah, basically, I think that's all what I wanted to cover in this short video today, at least. So also you have this where people are just using these random filters, seeing what I would look like as a sim. A sim is basically like this non-player character type, or a sim is from the video game, The Sims, which I really do feel the Sims in general were just priming us to the world that we're in now, right? Like making everyone look artificial and all of that. And so this person in particular is using this filter, and you have to ask yourself, are people who are AI to begin with, who are the soulless entities, the soulless beings to begin with, are they more drawn to these filters? Because I have to tell you one thing, not once, even 10 years ago when you first came out with these filters, like I remember it so well, back in 2012, 2013, you had a whole bunch of filters. You had like the aging filter, you had the filter that makes you look like you're a child or a baby, you had the filter that, which is creepy, right? I mean, that's an agenda in and of itself too. And you had the filter that makes you look like the opposite gender, like man, woman, whatever, whoever you even are. And then you had the filter that makes you like, so you had all these filters. And for me personally, I just saw all my friends around me always use those filters. And then back then you would just send them as a text message or post them somewhere on your Facebook or social media. This is 10 plus years ago. But for me personally, I never felt drawn to trying out any of these filters. I never saw the appeal. I also never thought it was super funny. I never really saw the joke in all of this. And I get it that, people who don't have who have too much time on their hand or are kind of just bored at work or whatever, they just tried them out. And it's also a group pressure thing. Once one person tries them out, you want to try them out too, because you want to be a part of that group. But for me personally, I just never really found the appeal in any of these filters. And I do think people who are just drawn to these filters in general, maybe they're AI to begin with. Like this one person, she's like, what would I look like as something? Like nowhere in a million years would I even be drawn to see what I look like as a sim. Why do I even want to look like an artificial computer game, a video game? Like, no. And then second of all, you're giving all this app your data, and now they have everything, facial recognition, everything, which your phone already has too, if you're actually using that, which, if you know me, I'm not using any of that because my cameras are taped up pretty much all the time, unless I'm using them to record a really quick something, reel or whatever, and then they're taped up again. But yeah, all of these things are just feeding into the data overload that they're collecting about you anyhow. And this is just another thing, look like a sim, look like an NPC, look like someone who they can just control even more. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what your thoughts are, especially on the timeline switch. And if you have found more evidence in regards to that, if you knew about this, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, bye guys.